Hey guys, TJ Schwartz here. We're back on Edge and Flow podcast. I'm here with my co-host Lucas Burnley. Today we're excited to bring to you some miscellaneous content. We've got a lot going on. It seems like summer gets crazy and I don't know, just run the business and with the family, it seems like there's a lot going on. So we're diving into some really like actionable, good information regarding shop stuff, but also just some of the things we're exploring in our life on the personal side and things that are keeping us busy.
Yeah, we need to vent, I think.
hmm
It's been a hectic month and a half.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are in the same boat right now. What
hmm
we kind of stacked a bunch of activities.
hmm
What activity should we go chronologically?
Okay. All right. I
What
guess I
activity should we start with?
well, I ordered a CNC machine like 6 months ago and it was headed to my house. I mean, it was in Houston and they're like, "Hey, we're ready to ship it." And I had a week-long backpacking trip planned and they told me the dates they were going to ship it and I was like, "It's going to arrive while I'm not home for a whole week." So I had them well, it might have been like the day before and I was like, "It's just not worth the risk." I could just picture my wife like cussing me while I'm gone and she's like backing a truck up in our driveway or something. So I had to delay it. I had to tell them to hold it at their facility for like another week. But it arrived. But I guess there's the trip, and then you went to a cool knife show. What was it? The Oregon knife show.
Oh yeah, so this was really fun. This is out of chronological order. Also, just as a pro hack, if you're ever waiting on a piece of machinery, just go ahead and schedule a trip.
Yeah,
It will assure that you
yeah.
shorten your timeline.
It'll accelerate the
Yeah,
landing of
it'll
your
just
machine.
accelerate it.
Yeah,
But you have
that's a
to
good
pay. You
call.
have to actually pay for the trip, or
Right.
like make meaningful plans for it to show up the same weekend.
That's right.
Okay, so Portland show. This was really cool. It was a one night show in Portland at Zidell Yards. I think I'm saying that right. And it was put on by Billy Cho and Nick Rolfe. Who Billy Cho is a maker. Nick Rolfe is a collector and super talented musician. And I think they just wanted to do a really almost like a stripped down, like maker centric collector like evening, right?
hmm
Um, it was super cool. Like invitational only, didn't charge makers for tables, had a food truck out front, like very low key, 4 hours. But what was interesting was the amount of support it received from collectors. Man, it was awesome. There was a great roster of makers for sure, but like I was just amazed. I mean, people came from all over the country for a one night show. It was
Jeez.
super cool.
And it sounds super personal. I did not go to the show, and I just saw pictures and have heard what you thought about it. But
Yeah, well, and that's incidentally like this was Maddie and I's first show together without kids since 2017, and the first show Maddie's been to since 2018. So it was really fun, and you kind of nailed it with like the personal scale at in a 4 hour show. You have time and like the bandwidth and energy to like kind of connect with the people you want to connect with.
mhm.
Part of it's just that it's a smaller show in general. Like if you go to Blade, if Blade was 4 hours, it would be like a madhouse.
Yeah,
Wouldn't work. But at a show of this size, where there's maybe 40 makers, and I didn't hear a final number on collectors, but you're actually able to have a conversation. You're able to spend time at the table. Odds for the collectors were really good, and like man, yeah, the maker roster, like they pulled some really good names. It was very cool to see. So I'm excited to see where the show goes. It's nice to have something local. And again, like the idea of the one evening or one day show, I think for a lot of us, it just works. So yeah,
yeah.
that was super cool.
No,
I'm glad I did it.
I'd love to see more stuff like that go on and
Same.
participate more. And yeah, that's a cool model.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the show.
Yeah,
So backpacking trip.
yeah. So my brother-in-law, he was having a birthday, and he it was coming up, and I don't know if he intended it for it to be his birthday celebration. He says it wasn't, but it did happen to happen over his birthday weekend. But he invited it was the three brother-in-laws, so it's me and then the husband of my well, my wife's brother and then the other brother-in-law. But so the three of us went on a backpacking trip in central Idaho in a place called the Frank Church. So the Frank Church is like it is the largest wilderness area in the United States in the
Oh
lower
wow.
48. And wilderness area is that term's thrown around, but it is a legal definition of a type of land. So there's like national forest, and then there's wilderness, and wilderness has its own classification. And the main thing about a wilderness area is that they say in the law, like, no mechanical portage of any kind. So that includes bicycles.
Oh wow.
So if it has a wheel, if it is mechanism that transports your body, it's illegal. And so that includes airplanes, that includes hang gliders, that includes bicycles. So it's a horse or your feet.
Could you go through the horse-drawn carriage?
I don't think
No.
so. I
You're
don't think
shut
so.
down like
No.
wagon.
But
Nope.
you would never be able to have a wagon. I mean,
Sure.
it's so steep. But the cool thing about it is it's like I said it's the biggest in the lower 48, and it's like the combined wilderness area, it and like its neighboring wilderness areas is like 12% of the state of Idaho. And so it almost goes from the Montana border to the Washington border, so it stretches basically the whole width of Idaho. And so like 150 miles wide by at least that tall. And so we backpack into it, and it's to get really in there. We picked this lake that was one that my wife's grandpa had been to, and that's why my brother-in-law wanted to go to it. And so we did a
Nice connection.
45-mile loop, and it was 5 days, I think, about 5 days. And the hard part about it was the elevation gain. It was like the gross. We used like a GPS map software to tell us like
Mhm.
total gross incline or like elevation gain, and it was almost or right at 14,000 feet of gain, which the tallest mountain in the U.S. is Mount Whitney, which is in California, and so that would be the equivalent of going from the ocean, from sea level, to the summit of the tallest mountain in the country. And so it was spread out over 5 days, but it was like that was the total gross gain. So it was
Yeah, that's
just
still a hustle.
a butt burner, man. It was like just killer, but we pulled it off, and it was a great time.
Did you see any wildlife?
Saw a bear,
Cool.
saw sign for days. I mean, every kind of sign of any kind of animal, and it's a big bighorn sheep country. So we saw bighorn sheep. We caught fish. There was a swimming hole we got to. There's a river. There's several rivers that run through the Frank, and we were on one of them, and for part of it. And we were swimming in this hole, and there was these sheep. They were all female. They called ewes, bighorn sheep.
I don't like where
And
this is going.
they're drinking out of the swimming hole, and we're swimming in the swimming hole, and they're just like drinking out of the same hole, and they didn't leave. And so we're just swimming, and they're drinking right
It's because
there.
there's nobody around. There's like no fear.
Yeah,
They're
and
just
we
like,
get out and we start fishing. We start catching fish out of the same swimming hole. So we're swimming next to sheep and
what?
catching fish out of the same hole, and it's just like whatever.
You
I mean,
guys doing
just
catch and release, or was that dinner?
oh no, we ate them all.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah,
man.
it was a good time.
Yeah, that sounds like much needed, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was truly unplugged. I mean, it was like I didn't know even the slightest clue what day it was. There was one time I missed a whole day in my head, and I was like, "Aren't we going out day after tomorrow?" And they're like, "No, it's the day after tomorrow."
That is
And it
amazing.
was nice. I get back, I'm like,
5
it could be
days
Monday or
unplugged is
Friday.
real. I
Yeah,
mean, that's like, man, okay.
yeah. No, it was
I need
perfect.
one of those.
Yeah, some fresh air, man. It's the freshest of air. And we beat wildfire season by a weekend because that's the
Yeah.
one thing about those areas is they'll get just smoked in when
Have
the
you guys
fires
started
start.
having fires? Are
Yeah,
you starting
and
to see it? Yeah.
in the Frank, when the fires start, they don't put them out
Right.
because it's a wilderness area. So they've never controlled those fires. So if one starts in there, which they always do, at least
It
one,
just goes.
you just get smoke, and it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. But the vistas and the views when you don't have the smoke, if you can beat that, are amazing. So
It's wild. If you're not from the West or haven't spent a lot of time out here, it's easy to kind of kind of miss how much land actually exists and like the
mhm,
spaces between towns, especially like living on the East Coast for a little while. Like you just get into these voids. It's a
mhm,
crazy idea that you have enough land that like the fire starts and they just let it burn,
yeah,
but like there's nothing there. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And we stayed in a lookout. There was a lookout that was built. It was almost a 9,000 foot peak, and a fire lookout. There's fire lookouts all over the Frank Church. Some of them abandoned, And especially in the olden days where they literally had to post up and have
Right.
their binoculars and try to spot them. But this old fire lookout was built in the early 30s and abandoned in the 60s. So it's been abandoned for 60 years, and it's still standing, still square. It's like logs and just a vintage cabin on the very tippy top of like the highest peak. And we were sleeping in it. We stayed a night in there, and it's just there's not even doors or windows. It's just a little shack.
That's
And I
amazing.
remember the logs, the stuff they cram in the cracks of the logs, like moss. I mean, literally
Hmm.
like moss and grass to keep the airflow out. That had all
Hmm.
decayed, so you could lay in a sleeping bag and look out the crack, and you could. I was laying on one side, and my brother-in-law was laying on the other side, and I could see Montana laying on my pillow, looking through the crack, and he was looking the other way, and he was looking at a mountain range in Washington, and we're
Oh,
just
that's
like in this little
crazy.
shack, and it felt like you were in an airplane because you couldn't see the ground out the
Right.
window. It was just like straight out. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh, wow. Nice, man.
So it was a good time.
So let me ask you this: your full disconnect. Were you like worried about work? Did you leave work like on the bench?
Um, the machine I knew was coming, but I did delay it, so that like kind of patched that up. Honestly, no, I didn't really think about work. Honestly, I
Nice.
tend to
That's
do
perfect.
okay if I get out in a place like that. I can totally unplug. Luckily, it's not terrible. And I brought a couple of knives because I was going to do more photography. I brought a good camera, and I didn't do as much like product photography as I thought I was going to. Because once I reach like full unplug, I would think about like photographing it, and then I started thinking about Instagram, and it just kind of like
It like shuts you down. You don't want to
yeah,
do it, right? Yeah,
yeah,
I do the same
exactly.
thing.
So I was
Like,
bummed I didn't get as many pictures of the knife as I wanted, but at the end of the thing, I was like, yeah, it is what it is. Wasn't a work trip.
yeah, perfect.
But
Nice, man.
the IRS, it was a work trip.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they're not listening.
Some photography,
Yeah,
some product testing.
yeah, yep.
Okay, so speaking of work trips, I've got, if we go all the way back into like kind of where you and I both started getting busy, I went down to Ashland, Oregon, which incidentally is a rad town. I had never been there before. Super, super cool little town. But I went to check out Worksharp. Um, and I'm sure like a lot of you guys are familiar with Worksharp, but my first introduction to them was actually through another product, which was the Derek's Drill Doctor,
Mm,
which was like, I think probably 20 years ago. A machinist friend of mine had one of these things, and like it allows you to sharpen drill bits.
mm,
So that was like the parent company. Worksharp split off, and man, it was just super cool. Like going down, I didn't really know what to expect. I've spent some time with Matthew, who's the CEO, a few times over the years, like on business trips, like going to Germany or just seeing, kind of seeing him around, and I realized they're 3 hours away, and it was worth like a neighbor visit.
mm-hmm,
So the biggest takeaway for me, I was like, you never know what a business actually does. In my head, I was like, oh, they probably are like warehousing and then they ship product. Man, full engineering department. They had a full machine shop. They do assembly there. They do packaging there. They do all the product design in house. And just like walking around, and you just like, they're so they're almost like a Switzerland of a company, because I feel like they
mm,
work really well with all of these other brands,
mm-hmm.
and they're like good company, good to their employees, make like good product at like really good prices. And it's just neat to see that and be able to kind of like go around and like,
Yeah,
meet the people of the company. And
they
it was super fun.
from the outside looking in, they seem like an A list, like an A1 company, just
Yeah.
as a holistically, just as
Yeah.
a well put together, well managed, just clean, tidy looking company.
100%.
Yeah.
Everything is thought out well. Again, I think like company culture when you're in there like seems really good. Like, like they have like a really nice kind of cafeteria, like coffee house almost. And there's like, fresh fruit out on the tables, and just like you can see that like the employees, they probably take pretty good care of them. There's like, outdoor like seating areas and stuff where you can like go have lunch. It was very cool.
Mm,
I also got to shoot some content with them. So like I spent 2 days down there, and we just had fun. I was like, hey, if I come down, like, can we shoot some video? They've been doing all of this content around sharpening, and like these really cool, like scavenger hunts where they like geotag and they'll like leave like packages around and stuff. And I love seeing companies engage and kind of become community resources and like hubs for information. So I
That's
had to throw a
awesome.
wrench in that, and we just I feel like we mostly just had some silly time
Yeah,
making
well,
videos and
that's awesome. No, I mean
teaching me how
that's
to sharpen knives.
right. There you go. Yeah,
Well, it's different. That's the thing. Like they have a pretty robust product line, and when I'm looking, I'm like, okay, if a customer asks, like, hey, what do you recommend? I'd only used one of them, and so I just wanted to see. I wanted to see those being used on like my knives or something similar, just so that I would have like kind of a clear understanding of their capabilities and like weaknesses. Because
mhm,
I mean, the knives that leave my shop, like I sharpen on my machines. I'm not doing a lot of like manual hand sharpening once they're done.
mhm, right.
So I was like, hey, just teach me like I'm five,
Yeah. No,
and
I
they
I get
did.
anxiety because I have very stringent systems. I'm like a
Yeah.
process guy, so I like my overlands and my custom knives that I make. Like I have this very rigid way of doing it that plan out like exactly the bevel angle and all this stuff. And I always have people come up to me like, "Will you sharpen all my knives?" And they bring me like 6 knives, all different blade shapes, and it gives me
And
so much anxiety.
thicknesses and like yeah,
I'm like, what angle is that? And like, who sharpened it last? How did they sharpen it? And it that's where you get into, their discipline of like,
right,
how do you make something universal? You know what I mean? How do you make something that everyone can use that'll work on every knife? And
right.
that sounds like a lot harder task than what I'm doing, just
Well, and
making my own knives.
I completely agree, right? And there is like maybe I'm kind of like a cretin in this regard, but like for me, there's a point of sharpness where then a knife does its job.
Hmm.
Past that becomes like almost specialization, super interesting, definitely has its place. But
Hmm.
like for me and my knives, a lot of times I'm like, okay, that's going to cut whatever I need it to cut. So it was fun. We did like a test where like one of us used a powered system, one of us used one of their like field sharpeners,
Hmm.
and then I used, I think it's called the Precision Plus, which has like some angle adjustment and guides. And we all sharpened a knife and then did some like the internety like knife edge
Hmm.
tests that were
Yeah.
fun, But it's just interesting seeing like, oh, you have a recurve. Like I've always sharpened recurves on a flat stone. Doesn't matter. But it was cool to see it in process where you're like, oh, what would you do? And they spent so much time with this stuff, like they have an opinion on it or grit progression, stuff like that. So yeah, it was really fun. It was a good way to like nerd out for a weekend, visit friends. Um, Man, that's like the best. And really I
Hmm.
went down with like no expectations, like no real agenda. It was
Yeah.
just a social call.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and they
and
humored me.
I think I've said it before on this podcast, but a philosophy I always use is people before product, which means I've always found that people that are excited about what they're doing, that are doing good things, and that I like, and that imagine myself being around and being friends with,
Yep.
if I surround myself with them in the industry, the products will speak for themselves that like precipitate from that, and the deals that happen will be the best sort of deals
Right.
if it's people before product. And
Because
so if you
they're organic,
yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
you and I talk about the collaborative process and working with companies a lot. And I think we both have that in common, which is we've always, the relationship to the company has been more important than like just the financial opportunity,
Mhm.
especially at the outset. And I think for both of us, we found in the long run, like they actually work,
Yeah.
symbiotically.
Yeah, well,
So,
and you don't wanna be the guy that, like, keeps to themselves until they need something, and
yep,
then every conversation with a new person is always a business inquiry.
yep,
It's like the inquiries should be intermixed with, like, just having fun.
yeah.
It shouldn't start with that. Not
Well,
that it
and
can't, but
maybe that like ties in just to kind of our businesses in general, which so much of it is like, yeah, but we don't want it to suck. Like
yeah.
I don't want every relationship to have to be like a hustle or like a, quid pro quo type
Yeah.
of exchange. Like
Transactional.
I want people that I enjoy spending time with that I'm able to do interesting work with.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
gift.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
the ability to choose, that's a nice thing that,
That's
we
a
can
huge one. to
It's kind of
work with
like,
who you want to.
it reminds me of like in high school, there's all the cliques. And then
Yeah.
as soon as you leave high school, to a degree, you can start to be like, you know what? I never liked him anyway.
Yeah.
I'm doing my own thing. Like these are the people I do like. I'm going to hang out with
Right.
them. And it's like when you're doing what we're doing, the knife industry in general, it's like just kind of move with the flow of who are your good friends, who, is working hard, who has the drive, like who just fulfills what you're looking for in your
Right.
circle, and then it just feeds itself. So I remind myself of that philosophy, but to me, it is kind of natural. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to plan these friendships; they just come
Totally.
along.
Well, that's
So,
like the idea of networking in general, where you're like, we talked about that with Blade Show. Blade Show's networking. It's not a
hmm
networking event. It's just a place where you can spend time with all of the people.
hmm yep,
Some of those
yeah,
end up being like good connections.
yeah,
Some
totally,
of those just end up being too much beer.
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but that's the fun of it. It's
Could
like
go many ways,
you go many ways.
right?
All right, so that's a couple big ones. That's backpacking trip, work sharp, machine came. Oh, I know. I think I know where we're at. You and I spoke a few days ago, and we're both trying to solve the same problem,
Yep,
and we're going about it in slightly different directions,
yeah.
in different ways.
Before we dive into that, do we want to
Okay.
talk machines?
Oh, I mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Are we
Well,
talking like machine, like your machine? You want to talk about it?
that would be cool. But I was just thinking because that was the tail end of we had like a long kind of enduring conversation about machines before I ended up buying this one, even before I bought the Tormach. And so
We did.
we've got kind of a history of talking machines. So I was thinking maybe we could dive into some of that.
Okay, let me kick this one off then, because I think
Okay.
I remember the Tormach conversation. I think I had made like a pretty strong. I was like, I want you to get a machine,
hmm
and we like looking at the options. Like the Tormach really was like value proposition. It allowed you to get rolling and get working and test if you even wanted to own a CNC, right? Because
hmm
that was kind of where it started.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was when we were first talking about it? Like, what was your alternative if you didn't get a CNC? Because it seems like crazy now.
So where I was standing looking forward was the dream was always to have a CNC. Like that was always a part of my plan. And owning a house and having a real shop that I was able to invest in was kind of a prerequisite. It's not 100% necessary. You can rent a shop, but for me, that was step one, was to get the house. I had the house, renovated the house. Then it was time. I was like, the natural progression is now I can do the thing. I can buy the machine. But I was looking at it, and my business had been doing well for a number of years, and increasingly well. And without a CNC, I felt like I was doing a lot of the things that I did want to be doing. And I thought, with the CNC endeavor, like, am I going to be backtracking on what I've just been building, where I was more of like a designer and like a CAD guy? My only fear was, I like to some degree the philosophy of finding out what you're good at and like tripling down on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And CAD was kind of that thing for me. And so the CNC world was still alien to me. And
Right.
I was worried about, like, if I start anew on that journey, which I in my heart of hearts wanted to do, I was worried if it's like, is it going to just be a distraction? Is it going to like water down the whole thing that I've built? Because I'm 10 years in at that point. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what I did find though, when I did buy one, was, and with your nudging, decided to finally do it. When it finally arrived, what I realized is like what I was doing in the CAD environment and everything I was doing, it was just annexed to that, and
They're
it
so
didn't
hand in hand. That
it
was what
wasn't
I
really a
saw.
diversion.
No,
Yeah.
it's no to you already had like 90% of the skill set plus your process oriented. So it's like for you, fixturing, things like that are actually super intuitive,
Mm.
which is crazy and I hate you. But but yeah, it's like a natural extension.
Right.
When did the Tormach come? Are
It's
you a full
been
year? More
18
than
months.
18 months. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
now second machine.
So the first machine, Tormach, I got a smoking deal because it was, long story short, repossessed, and I bought it from Tormach's financing department, or the company they work with for financing had just repossessed it, so I got a crazy hot deal, and it was single phase and it was small, and I have a
Yep.
small shop, and my shop was non-existent at the time. Like, it was just, we just had all our crap, like bikes and kayaks, stored in there. So I
into
kind of went
CNC.
small, light, what I could fit without too much power stuff. Got it in there, started running it like a freaking working it like a horse, you know what I mean? Just like using it every day, all day, and realizing like, okay, I'm actually using this thing more than I thought I would. And it's doing a nice job. But the new machine is a whole new tier up in terms of weight, power, size, all these things. And so it's called a Sile SYIL, and it's the Sile X7 specifically, but it's three-phase power. So I had to buy a three-phase converter. I'm keeping the Tormach. They're both going to squeeze in there somehow, and it's just a whole different plane of just machine engineering. I mean, when it's sitting under my carport right now, and I uncovered it. I haven't moved it in yet, and I was just walking around it and looking at it. And I know it's a small machine by industrial standards, but it is an industrial machine, whereas the Tormach is not. The Tormach is the highest end of hobby grade,
Right.
whereas Sile is like the lower end of true industrial.
Right.
And that division, that
Industrial
like
and precision.
yeah, the gap
Yeah.
between them in terms of like the mass, like you look at the just gauge of the material in different
Yep.
places and stuff. It's like it's just a different planet, man. It's
Right.
not even the same.
Well, and that's okay. So there's a few things that come to mind here, which is okay. One, we got to dive into why you want two spindles, because
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, there's different thought processes around CNC. So like when I got mine, kind of the prevailing knowledge around machines was like you buy the biggest machine that you can fit.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I actually realized that that is not always the best advice if you're making a specific part. So
Mm-hmm.
like if you have a part envelope, yeah, it's nice to be able to G job and like make something larger every once in a while. In the probably 12 years I've had my machine, I don't think I've ever done that. I just make
Mm-hmm.
knife parts and side pops and
Yeah.
other stuff. Okay. So size of the machine makes perfect sense. Switching to two spindles, why do you need two spindles?
So I found out real quick that because of my skill set leading into this, I was going to start leaning ridiculously heavily on CNC automation for a lot of components of my custom. So I'm machining the perimeter just like anybody would on the whole tang of the knife, the chamfers, the engraving, which is typical. But then what I'm doing is also the bevel. So I'm machining the bevels, fully 3D machining the handles. And what I found was way better for my systems was to also machine the kydex. So it's thermoformed, but then holes are drilled, perimeters machined. The actual technical part of the sheath is done on the CNC. And what I found was not only spindle time, because in my head on paper, like this amount of spindle time was enough with one to do it that hit my goals. But what I discovered was the scheduling involved when you have a dozen steps on the CNC that have to happen for one knife to exist. And then you have like, okay, I'm a little bit behind on sheath production. I got to pivot. I got to do some of those. And pretty soon you're doing a lot of setup and tear down and a lot of like switching things around. And then suddenly your actual spindle uptime is less than you thought. And then I realized like one spindle is not going to be enough. And so two spindles, the benefit is I'm going to have a wet machine, which is going to be the new machine, which wet meaning use coolant on steel. So it'll be running coolant, have filtration for the coolant and all that. But I do my Kydex and G10 dry, at least for now. And having a wet machine and a dry machine that are independent and that can run in parallel, it's not only more spindle availability, but it's easier scheduling, like I said.
Right. And you're able to shorten runtime, not necessarily make more, but time your parts correctly
Mm-hmm.
to where the blades have to go out to heat treat. So you're doing those, you're doing handles, blades go out to heat treat, you're able to like blast and tumble handle skills. So there's an efficiency there that is pretty hard to get with a single spindle. So like if you look at the way that I work, if I'm making folders, like I'll usually make like 5 or 10 part sets, and then my machine is idle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you are more efficient and you're going into more of like a production flow mindset. That spindle time becomes super important.
Yeah. And in
Right.
addition to that, the other thing is I found it pretty difficult when I get into like sharpening and assembly and shipping, which is a huge part, like a surprisingly big part. Cause you think of like sharpening, assembly, shipping, like that's easy, quote unquote. Like it's not a lot of like brain processing going on, but the amount of time it actually takes is pretty significant. And I have a really hard time actually keeping the CNC going while I'm doing that.
Yeah.
A little bit more difficult than I thought, because if am shipping like 50 knives and I'm trying to box them, like I got to have clean hands. I got to be in a sterile place, going back in the shop and flipping parts, changing tools. Like it's a hard, hop, skip, and a jump going back and forth. And your brain is not really wired. Mine isn't, to go back and forth between those two operations. And so the idea
Nobody's mind
too,
is wired for it. Some people,
right,
like, you can do it. It is not the most efficient thing,
exactly. And I
right?
found that if I have two spindles, my theory, this is what I'll find out, is if I can double my machine capacity, then maybe they will work 2 weeks out of the month and be idle
Right.
2 weeks, but
Yep.
those 2 weeks will be double the output. So, in
Double the
other
output.
words,
Yeah.
I can set up more work for me to then sharpen and package and ship
Yep.
in less time
Yep.
and not feel the need to like keep the machine running while I'm not next to it. And
Right.
so it's not that they're both going to run 4 weeks out of the month all the time. It's that it'll be a denser CNC day or week if I'm doing that thing.
Right. Well, and this idea, I think, would be like almost like heretical to machine shops. We're not job shops, right?
Mhm.
For us, running our spindles, 100% of the time, or like running lights out, I don't think it's necessary. And I also don't think for us it is beneficial, because that consumes all of the time. So like, even if you look at it from, you have two machines now, those machines are going to need to be maintained. They're going to need to have coolant topped up, chips removed. You're like me and you want things to be like nice and clean. Actually being able to shut your machines down for a week or 2 weeks and keep them running in tip top condition and like in a small space, keeping them clean, super valuable. If
Yeah.
you're running just nonstop, two things happen, right? Which is that is your entire workload, but like, and the maintenance slides, right? But you
Mhm.
also, I think with creative work, I think it's really good to almost stagger the productive work with like the creative, I'm looking for like a more elegant way to say it, but essentially like your creative flow,
Mhm.
right? It makes sense in probably like, or let me back up. In small shops that do semi production techniques, this is why to me this is still like the handcraft side. A lot of it is that thought process, which is giving yourself space to work creatively instead of forcing to business to have to be productive all of the time. So that kind of brings me to the last question I have about the machine, which is kind of leads its way into the airline thought too. Um, you went with Sile. As
Mhm.
we were looking at machines, I was making the argument for Haas.
Mhm.
Sile is a known quantity, but less so in the United States than Haas is.
Absolutely.
Why did you ultimately decide to go with Sile?
So I guess I'll expand it to add Tormach into the conversation.
Yeah,
I went with Tormach initially, for reasons that everyone does. They're in a garage shop. I think it was probably the right move, but I can see why you may or may not want to do that. I think I'd be on the fence about whether that's a good idea to go Tormach again.
would you still start there?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's a great
that's what
starter
I mean. So
machine.
you don't know that you would add another Tormach spindle,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you would still start there initially.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But with the Sile, so the Sile versus Haas conversation, because I'm going to say again, like the Tormach is in its own league. It's a hobby machine. It can
Right.
do, it can punch above its weight class, but it has its own weight class. The Sile, they're in the territory of Haas in every way. I mean, because they build machines that are as big as a VF3. They
Right.
build, machines that, like, the one I have is basically comparable to a mini mill, like a super mini mill is
Right.
essentially what I bought, but it's a style version of that.
Right. And,
And
and this should be said like comparable in every way except for price.
exactly. So, but what I looked at is, so with, I have to fit. I think I would probably have been interested in something like a VF2 if I had the space. I have in
Sure.
no under absolutely impossibility. Just garage door height's too low, not enough space. Especially if I do want two spindles, just out of the question. The
Right.
mini mill was going to be the only other option. So it's the mini mill or the Sile. And so
Yep.
the mini mill, I've is a little bit on the controversial side for Haas. It's not like really their breadwinner, and most of the people that own mini mills. I have nothing against Haas or mini mills, but they're not like the most loved machine. Just kind of
Right.
they're there,
People
but
don't like the way the chips get removed and
yeah,
like, or like where the coolant is. There's some, right.
yeah, and so, but I think there's a good solid machine. I have nothing truly against them. It really was down to the wire deciding between that and the Sile. But what I discovered with the Sile is the X7 is kind of, it's a lot more modern breed of machine because it's a
Hmm.
new design. It's like a 2019 release, so the machine was completely from the ground up redesigned, and it's so different in so many ways. So I'll just go through what Sile is. Sile is a Chinese company. I would compare them. They're like, I illustrated them as like they're the Wii knife of CNC machines. So they're
Me
doing
and
like
by that you mean like super, like very impressive quality for the price,
exactly,
right? It's kind of
yeah,
like that made,
it-
yeah, made sense.
yeah. They're and so they're casting the casting of the machine. As and most people have looked into CNC know that it's the main part of the weight is a enormous base and what's called a column, and that's what supports all these systems. And it's where all the weight is, and it's designed to dampen vibration and whatnot. And in pretty much all machines, it's iron, it's cast iron. The Sile is actually granite, but it's like fake granite. It's like epoxy granite is what they call it. So it's kind of like a fake countertop, if you can picture that you would buy at like Home Depot, that feels like a real stone, but it's like poured and cast.
Super
And
stable,
yeah,
very, very heavy
it's
and
thermally
rigid.
stable is the main reason to do it, is because it doesn't expand and contract with heat, which is always something you notice with CNCs. They warm up, they move. You have to re-indicate and make sure everything stays on track when it warms up, which is manageable. It's not the end of the world. But that casting is made in Switzerland, so it's Schneeberger is who makes the casting, who's a very A-list, top of the line machine casting builder. So it's a
Hmm.
Swiss machine casting and Japanese ways and ball screws, and then the Chinese assemble an enclosure around it and set it up with whatever controller you want. So you can get Siemens, Fanuc. I went with one called a Syntec, and you can
Why
get
did you
three
choose
phase,
the
single phase.
Syntec?
So the Syntec is basically a Fanuc. It's basically a comparable to the Fanuc. It's like runs similar G code and whatnot, but the Fanuc is probably $15,000 more. Which,
Right.
if I was going to do the Fanuc version of this, then suddenly the Haas question
You
is
start to
probably
come
like
back into the
you
price.
start to come back to Haas, yeah. And so, but it's just to get to the nuts and bolts of it, to get the speed, the mass, and the power in a Haas that compares to the Sile. The Sile is about $39,000 before shipping, and the Haas, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I want to say it was more like 65.
Once, yeah, once you're optioned out in the Haas, you're like 60, 70. And I'm in the same boat too, right? Like
Yeah.
I have a 2007 Haas tool room, which is the TM1P. Where I'm at is I need more tools, but I need overall a smaller machine. So I have more
Hmm.
bed than I can really use,
Hmm.
but I only have 10 tools, and I would love to have like the Sile. It would work at 16, right?
Hmm.
The Haas is 20.
Yeah.
But I'm going into some of the same questions,
Yeah.
which is like what you presented with Sile is for a value proposition is very, very good. My
Right.
biggest concern with Sile was like support,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
The nice thing in a way, like I almost feel like you have an Android phone, I have an Apple phone.
Yeah.
I feel like you almost see the Sile as like Android platform where you're like,
Exactly.
yeah, these
Yeah.
pieces change out. Haas is very Apple. Like, oh, you need a software upgrade or you want to like upgrade a piece of hardware, and it's like it's already in your machine. You just need to pay for the code,
Yeah.
which like a
Yeah.
lot of people hate. But you can also call and they show up with a truck and will fix your machine.
Yep. Yep.
I've always had a concern about the support.
Hmm.
You and I are both in the Sile user group on Facebook, and it actually like there are problems that arise, but you're in there more than I am. Are they being taken care of in a satisfactory way?
Yeah. So the big hole with the Sile machine, like you said, is there is not a Sile Tech with a van that says Sile on it that's going to show up to your house. It does not exist. Maybe it exists in other continents, but not in North America. and so you are going to be having to fix it, or you're going to have to hire a like essentially someone who's kind of a neutral party, who's like a CNC repairman of sorts, if that makes sense.
Do you
And
have
so
access to someone like? I mean, I would assume being near Boise, you probably have somebody like that. That's
yeah,
someone
just
you
a
should have
general
their number.
CNC work. There's
Yeah,
shops that they just specialize in all things CNC, so that'd be a little bit more the route you'd have to go. But they have a warranty, and the parts they ship parts to your if it's under warranty or if it's after warranty and you need to buy parts, you can always get parts. I haven't heard of any issues with people getting parts for Sile,
right,
but it's not the kind of thing where, oh, the machine quit working, I'm gonna go drink a cup of coffee and dial a phone number, and they're gonna fix it for me like a Ford
right,
dealership would. You know what I mean?
right,
So that is the void between them, and really to me that is the justification for Haas, because I think the machine itself is very comparable. They both have some advantages,
right,
but there's not a difference functionally that's big enough to justify the price.
right,
But the local service is the thing that would to me, like if someone were to say, I'm starting a machine shop, I want to have a fleet of machines, I'm going to have a bunch of employees, I'll be like, you have to go Haas,
probably
because
go
you
Haas.
you can't afford with that kind of overhead to like tinker with a machine. You just
Right,
can't. That's what I plan on doing if I have issues. That's what I do
right.
with the
Well, and you
Tormach.
again, you have not redundancy, but you have a second machine.
Mhm.
So for me, this like I am concerned. One, I'm a slow learner and I'm not like amazing at CNC. So I've spent time learning my Haas. I'm nervous about switching systems because
Mhm.
that'll slow me down. And I'm nervous about problems that may arise because my time at this point is better spent making parts
Mhm.
than it is fixing my machine.
Right.
Um, Although I'm coming around to it in certain ways, like I'm very like I would be very confident going with a Sile at this point. But it's interesting because like the Haas in a way is that value proposition still,
Mhm.
because you have a
Yeah.
lot of machinists that are like, no, I don't want a Haas. Like
Yeah.
you can do like whatever a
Yeah.
Mazak, or like you're going somewhere else,
Yeah.
but
Haas
you're
is
also
is
spending
not the end all
twice the
be all.
money,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
3 or 4 times the money.
Mhm.
Again, looking at these as tools for knife making, I think that in that price range, they're like, man, they do everything you need them to do.
Mhm.
It's just figuring out like where your comfort level is.
Mhm. Well, one thing I liked about the Sile that I'm not 100% sure on the Haas exactly how it's set up, but because of the mineral casting frame,
Hmm.
obviously the ways, like, so if you're not familiar, the ways are the friction surfaces where the table slides on. So like it's the actual bearing surface for movement, and the ways on a conventional machine that's an iron casting are part of the casting. So like
Right.
you would take that giant casting that weighs 5,000 pounds in the factory, and they would grind the ways to be perfectly straight and parallel, and then they would assemble the machine on top of that. And so if you get any issues where, let's say you're machining G10 all day and you wear out those ways, the machine, you can take the whole thing apart and you can re-scrape those ways. But at the end of the day, if the ways are starting to go on you, the machine's it's the end of life type failure for the machine. And maybe it could be used for like really low precision stuff, but those ways are the heart, the beating heart. Once
It's
they're
the
done, it's
accuracy.
done. But because of the mineral casting, they have to use what's called linear rails. So like they're Japanese made, they're mounted on through basically threads that are cast in steel threads that are cast into that casting, and they bolt those ways on. So if they wear out, you can just put new ones on. And so
Yeah.
the
It's
long
pretty.
term, if you're going to own it for like 10, 15 years, it can be rebuilt to 100% of its original capacity in an afternoon, just turning a wrench. Whereas with a boxway, which is what their
Yeah.
most Haas's run, like it's going to last a long time. There's
Right.
25-year-old Haas's still doing really well.
Chances are, as like a small 1, 2, 3, 4 man shop, you could
Yeah.
probably use it for an entire
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. And it may not be a big concern, but once those ways start to decline, basically what's going to happen is the accuracy is going to start to decline, and it's not recoverable. Like the
Right.
accuracy is just going to begin to decline and never return. So,
Yeah.
so that's one advantage for a long term case. Yeah. there's a lot of details that
You and I had a bunch of conversations
Yeah.
about this. The
Yeah.
one other element that I really liked about the Sile was they do, I think it's the X5.
Hmm.
The thing is like the size of a refrigerator. I mean, it is small. And you're like, okay, you're $40,000 in, $80,000 for two 16 tool.
That one's
What
30.
is it? 30?
The X5 is 30,000. Yeah.
30,000.
It's like
Okay. So
starts at 27.
$60,000 for two machines, each with 16 tools,
20,000 RPM.
20,000 RPM spindles. Like that becomes like a lot of output potential
Mm-hmm.
in, I think I measured it out, and I think two of those is smaller than my current machine.
Right.
So I'm very curious. I'm very grateful that you bought one,
Yeah.
and we'll be using it to a level that I can aspire to, and we'll see. We'll see in a few months.
I think I'm the first. I've seen guys making knives on the Sile, but I don't think they bought the Sile to make knives. Like they're just people that are machine shop guys that have made knives with them.
Made knives. Or there's a few guys. Yeah, there's like I think I saw a guy who makes like oyster knives or something.
Yeah, but I'm
like funky titanium.
I might be the first full-time knife guy in the conventional sense to just buy a Sile instead of a Haas and to
cool.
like roll those dice. And there was a little bit of excitement for that because I do have a YouTube channel and I will be posting a bunch of videos. And to me, there was a little bit of a like mystery box factor that kind of attracted me. So we're gonna see how it goes. I have high hopes for it. I'm pleased with it just sitting in my driveway what it looks like. So that doesn't mean anything.
It's beautiful. Like from a design standpoint, they are very, very attractive machines. I don't know if that I don't know how many people that matters to, but for me, I'm like, I want an aesthetically pleasing workspace.
I hate to say it, but their accent color is yellow, and everything that I do accent color wise, like website and everything's yellow. So it's like that was a subliminal little thing. It's absolutely not why I bought it, but it like pleases me. I'm happy that is the accent color.
Here's the thing: as like a craftsperson, I remember when I first got my CNC, somebody like asking me like, like, whoa, that thing's crazy. Like someone who wasn't a maker or like, how much was that? I'm like, I was like $40,000. And at that time they were like, dude, that's like a sports car. Like, a car, a sports car there is relative too. Cause it's like, it's an Impreza.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, you're right. It's a sports car, but it makes money.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, yellow accent. Dude, do it. Match your cabinets.
Yeah.
Like it's a treat, man. It's your sports car. Like that'll buy you sports cars in the future.
Sex appeal does matter. It doesn't matter what it is. And like with the CNC, it's like, man, I just want it to look, it does look pretty cool. So I can't wait to get it in the machine or in the garage and take some pictures and stuff. And I will say just to cap this conversation off, I think if this machine works out the way people love them, everyone that has one loves them. Most of them are in Australia, like you were saying earlier,
and Asia, right?
The reason we don't hear about them is because the voltage on the thing is a European voltage. Like they run them in Europe, they run them in Asia, they run them in Australia, New Zealand. That's where, like, I would imagine there's more of these in New Zealand than maybe Haas. I made that up. It might not be true, but you see a lot of them over there. And so we're like just getting the early kind of wave of them in the United States. But the thing, if it works out the way that all these people in these other countries seem to portray them, I want to have two Siles. I'll probably sell the Tormach side by side as the redundant double system that I've just been describing. But I want to have a Tormach that is like the cheap base model without the enclosure, no coolant, like spend 10, 11 grand on a brand new Tormach that only does Kydex. And I don't need a tool changer for it. And it would just be like a little Kydex position, just a little Kydex corner in the shop. That'll be the long term. Would you even need to go?
I mean, is that something that you could like hit with like an X carve or something?
Probably
like go router.
Probably, but like, I mean, the Tormachs, you can get them down in like the $6-7 grand range. And it's like, I already know how to run it. I do like the machine a lot. It does a lot of good things. And so it's like, probably makes sense. The one I have, and I'll just circle back to Tormach one more time. So the thing that I would say about Tormach is I bought on a good deal. So I got like 30% off of my machine because it was that repossessed situation.
Yep.
If I had paid full price for my Tormach, it would be the same price as this Sile. And that's not okay. Like looking at the two machines, it's not acceptable.
Spec, pound for pound.
They're not equivalent. And they're not even comparable. They're just, I mean, It's
No,
completely disparate. And
yeah,
so because I got such a good deal on it, it makes sense, but I would not pay the full price. And by extension, if you buy this cheap stripped down Tormach, let's say you spend 12 grand on a Tormach because you got like a base package. That is what Tormach should be.
right,
And I think when they reach up and totally equip it into this like attempt at an industrial machine,
right,
it starts to reach out of its grasp, I
right,
think. And so that $12,000 to $15,000 Tormach is perfect because it's 15,000 is way less than 40,000. It's way smaller, and that's the niche that they should be in. And they build, machines with a bunch more capability like the one I have, but then you're in the territory of spending money that you should be buying something else. And that's my opinion, but
Well,
um
the other nice thing, like, okay, the reality is you're increasing your output, so you can add another machine at some point. You're like, all right, you just worked your way out of your own shop.
right,
Okay. So
right,
like,
right.
and then at that point, you're like, you already have a very nice Tormach.
Hmm.
Odds are you at the point where you need another style, you just keep your Tormach that you have because it's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
You use that as like a whatever, post op machine or like first op machine or
Hmm.
something, Kydex only or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
you don't have to pay to have two machines moved.
Yep. Right,
You just run
right.
that thing into the ground.
Yep.
Dude, that's exciting.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So there is Sile Haas conversation. I am undecided, but I'm with you. I like a lot of what Sile is presenting. And if it works out for you, I think that's definitely something
yeah.
I will look at,
And
especially because, like we talked about earlier, right? Your friends. If I have a friend who has this thing, I can learn how to run it.
mhm,
It's different than learning how to run it completely
yeah.
on your own
And
or
the next 5 years will be interesting because I know Sile is on the move,
yeah.
and they're building out facilities and they're building out infrastructure, and they're hiring like American machinists to be
Yep.
like their ambassadors and whatnot.
Yeah.
And if it's happening fast, like I've talked to a number of guys that they're like, well, I might start working for Sile. Like
I've
they're
seen that too.
Yeah, and so there's it's the ability to have someone work on it that knows the machine, I think, is on the steep uphill curve right now, and it'll be
Yep.
interesting to see where that lands eventually.
Yeah.
So the future is interesting,
It's pretty fun, man.
but
I'm excited for you.
thanks.
All right. So this brings us to kind of the last and like current issue that we're working through, which is airlines
Yeah.
and compressors.
Hmm. So
So,
my new machine needs air.
yep.
Pretty much every CNC machine needs some kind of air. And so I have to run airlines. And it used to be that I ran a hose to my Tormach on the ground and it would run behind my benches and I didn't care. But now that I'm going to have two, the only way to keep it off the floor is I got to run like wall mounted, surface mounted, or ceiling mounted air. And so I'm having to rebuild my air system under those ideas. And so you and you've done those before. You've done systems before. So tell me about what you've done.
All right. So I am a huge fan of Rapid Air Max Line, which is essentially, we'll get to your PEX in a minute, but you can almost think about it like PEX, where you're able to cut it easily. You're able to splice into it. They have their own proprietary fittings. It's beautiful. It's high pressure. Works very, very well. And it's easy to install. And I'm getting ready to run 3/4 inch Rapid Air Max Line, which is overkill for the space, but I already have some of it and I really like the way it looks and it functions great.
Hmm.
And you are getting ready to run off of an existing compressor, right?
Hmm.
Do you have an air dryer?
I don't have an air dryer. I have a bunch of air catches. Air
Mm-hmm.
dryer is something I'm looking into. I don't have the space for like a dedicated, like actual powered air dryer, but I've seen where people run through. They fill tubes. It's a series of tubes with I don't know if it's like silica
Silica, yeah.
beads or whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Well,
but
you can get the inline like desiccant filters.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
help. It also depends on like air usage, humidity in the air, like all of that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Are you
Well, it's
having any like air in or any water in your air now?
slight amounts on the
Slight
blast
amounts.
cabinet side. I haven't noticed it at all.
Okay.
But the only time I've noticed it is if I'm blowing off like my fixtures in my CNC with that nozzle for the CNC. Every once in a while, it'll be perfectly dry, and I'll see a little tiny splat of water, like a droplet made its way through onto
Yep.
the fixture, and I'll just see that, and I knew it came from the line. And
Right.
so it's something I'm going to have to work on. I know that it's creeping in there a little bit. It hasn't done anything negative that I've ever noticed, but I know it's not good. So it'll be
How many gallons is your compressor?
it's 60 gallon.
Is it like California Air Tools or something like that?
The one I got a smoke and deal, and it's a central pneumatic, like a Harbor Freight, essentially.
Okay.
So it's 15 CFM, basically your standard 5 horsepower air compressor. It's
15's
three-cylinder.
enough for everything we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And your new machine, your Sile, I thought it's not servo tool changes.
So the X5, just to circle back, the X7 is the one I got. It's been out for a few years.
Got
The
it.
X5 they just announced, and they're delivering probably the first of them, like fourth quarter of this year. Those, I believe, have 0 air input. They're all servo. So the tool changes and the drawbar and everything, I think everything
That's wild.
is completely airless, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this one does have air. It's got an air drawbar.
Okay.
And
So yeah, you're going to be running 2 machines. Your air usage is going to go up, and this is like that idea of like, okay, if you have both spindles running and you're blasting parts,
right.
do you have the airflow? And is that going to increase? I don't know, man. The water in the line thing is something that I'm like obsessed with.
Right.
Like it's ridiculous. Like the Kaiser that I bought is the Air Tower 5C.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 21 or 24 CFM, 100% duty cycle.
That's perfect.
It's way overkill for kind of what we're doing. But the two, like, it's quiet. They're still, they have kind of a high pitched noise, but it's like, I want to say like under 70 decibels.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that perfect, clean, dry air. Like to me, I'm like, it helps protect my other tools. It improves my working environment.
Yeah. No,
I know a lot of people would not drop the coin on a Kaiser.
I don't know if it'll be a Kaiser, but I'm going to be buying a nice air compressor because it's probably the most annoying thing that I own is that air compressor. Like it's really freaking loud and it works. It's enough air. The CFM's enough, but it's so loud and it's like there's so much reverberation that comes from that thing. It works. I mean, everything that I'm doing with it functionally, I have no issue. Right. But I will get there. It's on the list and it's getting higher on the list. But for now, the airline's running to where it is.
That's like the key.
That's infrastructure of getting air to where it needs to go right now is the first focus. But you'd mentioned Rapid Air, which Rapid Air's it's a nylon type of line, but it has
with an aluminum liner,
an aluminum sleeve, but the aluminum's inside of it, and so you can't see the aluminum.
It's like 3 layers, I think. Actually, it's like nylon, aluminum, nylon.
Yeah.
So I mean, over the years, you see like old school, you run iron pipe for your airlines. Eventually, iron pipe rusts out and explodes. Maybe not.
And you get potentially flaking and particulate like moving through the airlines because of the rust.
You get rust and stuff pushed through. People do copper. Copper's expensive. You got to solder it. People do PVC. That's my least favorite option ever.
Cheapest, easiest. Most explosive.
Like if you want to build a bomb in your shop, that when you like accidentally tap it while you're sweeping, it like shatters and explodes. Like it's a good fit. You had presented the idea of PEX.
Yeah.
Where did you end up on PEX versus Rapid Air?
So I've used PEX a lot. Not a lot, but I've messed with it quite a bit because I've done like DIY jobs on various plumbing,
which is
stuff,
a plumbing
like
product. Yeah.
It's a plumbing product. PEX has taken over all plumbing. It used to be, it was like, oh, copper, iron pipes, all gone, all PEX everywhere.
All PEX.
Everything's PEX now. And it's like, I think plumbers just love it. It's like this new thing. It's a whole new generation of plumbing, but there's type A PEX. I don't know all the details, but there's a type A PEX that's rated for high pressure and it's rated for like 800 PSI. And you can go down to the Home Depot. There's one near me and I can go buy, you can either buy it in a roll or you can buy straight sticks, which is beneficial. And it's one of the main benefits of it is you can get a straight stick. And so when you clip it on the wall, you're not dealing with a coil. So with the Rapid Air, the benefit of Rapid Air is because of the aluminum. I'm not sure the engineering behind it, but I think the reason the aluminum's there is so that when you unroll it, you can run it through a straightener like we talked about, where it rolls the pipe straight and then you hang it and the aluminum will retain the shape because it's actually got a little bit of rigidity. Whereas a PEX pipe, it's only half inch what I'm going with. It's smaller diameter. You can buy it straight, but
It's
it's
gonna
not
sag.
gonna it doesn't have the memory. It's like it's
Right.
firm, but if you have like a 36-inch section without clips or something, like it's probably not going to be just like beeline straight.
Right.
And
Yeah, I
so
want to say you could probably run Rapid Air 4 feet easy without a connector with no sag. An easy way to think about it is almost like conduit.
yeah,
So what I love is you're able to bend, like you could bend a clean 45 in it.
yeah,
This is coming back to the
yeah,
OCD side of shop life, which is I would rather pay a little bit more for a product that is like plug and play and then and like aesthetically matches. The other thing is that they do all of these cool manifolds. So it's like, cool, you ran your air system. I like doing looped air systems. So it all
hmm
connects back in and it almost charges as like a secondary tank.
hmm
Um, so you have these cool manifolds and like quick disconnects, or you have a manifold with three, outlets on it. All of this stuff you can DIY. I wonder at the point where it's like, is it more cost effective to buy the known system or to develop it
right.
yourself?
Right, and I think I love the Rapid Air solution, and it's not expensive. I mean, if you were to go with a half-inch line, which is gonna be enough for what I would need, it's like $100 for a starter kit, which has got, like, a pretty good selection of fittings and 100 feet of the tube, and the I would say the big thing that I'm looking at, and maybe I'm gonna regret this, but, like, in the shop that I'm in is so incredibly small. It's 20 feet, like 22 feet by, like, 11 feet. That's the whole thing. It's gonna have two machines. And the only reason to run the air from the compressor for this system is to go to the two CNCs. And I don't need drops off of that line. It's literally just one run along the wall to the two mills. And then the air for my sandblasting cabinet and where my like blow off hose and like my coiled up line for like if I'm doing tires or if I'm doing something else, it's all at the compressor and it literally has to be there because there's nowhere else to put it.
So,
And
okay, I was going
so
to ask you if you have like a coiled line,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
right
Yeah,
there.
and it's connected directly to the compressor. So this line that's going to the CNC, it's probably only about a 12-foot run, and then that's it. And so my only issue with buying the Rapid Air is if I buy 100 feet of line and then also figure out how to straighten it because you have the straightener. I was talking about
Hmm.
borrowing it from you, but the straightener is like $150 piece. And so I was like, well, if I buy the kit and the straightener, then I'm gonna have like 80 feet of extra line and a
And
$150 straightener.
so you're $250 for a
Yeah.
full system.
Yeah, whereas that 10-foot run, if I bought or 12-foot run, I can buy 10-foot section of PEX that are
Right.
$7, and it's like I'll drop like $20 and I'll be at the machines. And
Yeah.
the what I would want to do with the Rapid Air is when I have a bigger shop and it's empty and I'm setting it up the way I want it,
You
and I
run it.
know I'm going to have actual linear foot requirements, it's guaranteed going to be Rapid Air. And
Yeah.
so right now, I'm just thinking I need to get air 10 feet away without dropping a rubber hose on the ground.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you're probably PAX is as much as I like hate saying that. I think PAX is
yeah,
like if you're only running a 12-foot run, you just need air in a place. It
yeah,
doesn't make sense to buy 100 feet. Can I go off on a weird tangent that my brain
yeah,
just did though?
yeah, yeah.
Fast forward, you're selling your house because you're moving into a new shop and
Mhm.
house. Somebody walks into your garage and they see the beautiful Rapid Air, and they're like, if this dude went to all the trouble to put in this beautiful airline, I know he did things right in this house.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
there's your
point.
increased cash offer.
There you go. Right, and then I get an extra 15 grand right there.
Yeah, right
Some
there. It
some
pays for
guy some
itself.
with the brand knowledge of Rapid Air. There we
Yep.
go.
Yep.
Yeah,
Like
good
that
point.
looks good. Wow.
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
I don't
No, it's I think Rapid Air. I think I would do it. I don't know. It's
if you were
I
gonna wrap your whole shop, if and that's the thing, if I was you, if I was in your garage right now, I would probably be like, I'm just gonna run a loop of Rapid Air so I have the ability to have airline in
mhm,
every corner of my shop should I need it in the future. That
mhm,
is not necessarily the best way to work, but it's the way my brain works a lot of times, and it costs me time and money sometimes. And then every once in a
Mhm.
while it'll hit and I'll be like, oh, I do want an airline in my bathroom.
Yeah,
Who
right.
knew? Yeah.
Have a chuck right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, no, it's I think the rapid air is awesome. I'm going to be using it in the future. Like I said, I think with this shop, I'm doing it clean, I'm doing it reliable. I'm not using PVC. I'm doing it safe, but I'm doing it to tear out. I'm doing it to be temporary in a sense. Like it's
You're
not
not
it
doing more work than you need to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think when I get to a new shop, I'm buying like high-end LED lights, high-end
Right.
fittings for all my air, high-end air compressor. Like right now, it's like I need a second spindle and I need to get air to it. This is how I think I'll do it because it's probably the simplest and the cheapest and it's not unsafe. You know what I mean? Obviously, I wouldn't want to do
No,
something
it's the
unsafe.
best. Yeah, I hate
Um,
half measures. This is not a half measure. This is like a yes, but later.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean
exactly.
that's the beauty of what we do. Like, and again, I'm at a point now where I'm up. I'm going like I have moved into a new shop. I am upgrading my equipment. Like I was running on a when I sold my last Kaiser and we moved. I just needed air. I actually way under aired myself and just went with like a small California Air Tools compressor,
Hmm.
which actually, as you're looking at compressors, for a couple grand, you could get a big like 60-gallon. Man, they're so quiet.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
It
they're
has
awesome.
I imagine it's probably pretty similar to like a Quincy. Have you
Yeah,
ever seen a Quincy?
something in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
I was about to buy a Quincy, like, that was basically my compressor of choice, 60 gallon, and I
mhm.
was literally gonna buy it, it'd be like 1,800 bucks or something, totally okay with spending that, and then this 60-gallon Harbor Freight, a guy bought brand new and he never plugged it in because he, like, changed his mind,
Yeah.
and he sold it for, like, I think I paid, like, 450 bucks for it
Yeah.
on Craigslist, and I didn't have to pay for shipping, and I was like, I've got another X tens of grand to spend to get
Yeah.
other things going. And I was like, I'm just going to throw this compressor in. Works great.
Works
It's not
great.
what I want long term.
Improve it
I could
later.
probably sell it for 450 bucks again, which I probably someday will. But because I'm on like warp speed right now, I've only been making knives at this new upscale capacity for like since the Tormach arrived, which is 18 months ago, and it took me 4 months to even get started. So a year. And so dropping I mean, I'm going to be well over $100,000 spent on this shop in a year. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like I'm get I, I'm wanting to get it functional and safe fast and doing
Right.
what I want it to do and then start filling in the gaps. It's kind of
Yeah.
like my philosophy.
Well, and that's the beauty of what you're doing is that's a huge amount of money to be able to sink into a shop, but that's the beauty of making is you're
Right.
making money that you're rolling back into the business
Mhm.
and you're able to like slowly upgrade tooling.
Mhm.
That's super exciting, man. Congrats.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, thanks. And then also I've always had the Tormach insured, but I just got full coverage on all that because I
Nice.
got the new machine, and with 2 machines, I was gonna need, like, a comprehensive plan. So I just insured everything top to bottom with a rider for, like, if I have a bunch of inventory, like, I have knives that are halfway finished that burn up or something, all covered, which
Who did you go with out of curiosity?
Acuity.
Acuity. I
Yeah.
went with Chubbs.
Mm,
Back we're gonna harp on this a lot, right, guys? Which is like if you're making money, making something, making knives, running a shop, you need to insure yourself.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's medical, that's disability, that is liability. Like
Mhm.
it's just cost of
Yeah,
doing
general
business.
liability.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Take it into account.
Yeah. So yeah, I knew I was going to need to expand my insurance game plan for the business because, like I said, it's a whirlwind. It's been 1 year that I've like done all this, and so it's like tons of things. I'm like warp speed. Like, okay, I need more insurance. I need this. I need that. Like, I'm definitely on like overload of decisions. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
decision fatigue. And I was like, but
Take a
the
break.
insurance can't wait.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good one. I mean, and it comes in waves, but like hoping for the best is not a plan.
No,
Like
no. But if you're
that's
looking
not
at two charred castings where all the sheet metal melted off of it,
yeah.
and it was $90,000 worth of machine sitting there. Big tier.
I actually have a weird interaction with some of this stuff too, like paying taxes and like insurance. I actually enjoy it. Um in a way, I feel it's just like paying dues. And I'm like, if I can do this and I can do it the right way and I can still be successful, I think I take a lot of satisfaction from that.
Mhm.
Um, I think early on it's easy. I like, it's like you try to get by with things and you try to like, I just realized like, man, long game. I don't want to try to
Yeah.
get by on anything. I
Yep.
want it to
Yep.
work and I want it to be I want to be able to explain it.
Yeah.
Um, I want it to be secure for me and maybe my family in the future,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So cool.
Yeah. So
All right,
yeah,
man.
it's been a whirlwind that we just recapped all of that, like the backpacking shows, CNC. It was like only a couple weeks, so it's
Yeah.
just like I said, warp
Hopefully
speed,
some
man,
interest.
warp speed.
It does
So
feel like it, right? We're
yeah,
headed to the coast this weekend. We get like we're taking a 4-day break, kind of around the kids. We're meeting up with another couple that has one of Barlow's friends. Try to do a little bit of surfing and some family meals and just hang out for a few days. Very
hmm
excited.
that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah,
That's not the coast is
much needed.
beautiful over there. So awesome.
Can't wait.
Good time of
Um,
year too.
yeah, man. So okay, so next you're going to install your machine soon.
hmm
Um,
Yep.
I told you that if you need help, I'll drive
Yeah.
over if there's
Yeah.
something that you get,
I appreciate
whatever.
it. Yeah. This
Um,
this weekend, my goal is to have the machine in and the air hooked up. The power is I would love to also because that's going to be pretty easy to do, but I want to have someone there. And I've
yeah,
got a friend of mine that if he's available, he'll make sure I do it all right. But
electric, I don't
um,
like messing with it.
yeah,
I just
I,
want it
I
done
I know
right.
how it works, so I know I can
Yeah.
do it. But I am not plugging that machine into something that isn't looked at by someone that knows what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna if he's available, I might be able to hit the green button by Monday or on Monday.
Ooh,
That's that's what I'm hoping for.
get those high pucker tool changes going,
Yeah. Yeah.
flipping around.
hmm
All right, just some like general like house cleaning stuff. What else do we got going on? Okay, you just got us onto iTunes.
Yep. Apple
So
Podcasts.
yep, Apple Podcasts. So if you guys want to check us out there, awesome. Um, been getting some really good feedback on the pod. Seems like some of y'all are enjoying it. Leave us questions in the comments. Let us know if there's anything you want us to chat about,
hmm
or if you have time, feel so inclined. If you could leave us a review, that
Yeah.
would be awesome. Trying to get
Yeah.
some little bit of traction on it.
Yep. Yep.
So
I appreciate you guys listening. It's been a ride. I've had a few messages from a few people that some of you guys that are listening, and it's invigorating because
yeah,
this is an adventure for us. I mean, we're enjoying this, but at the same time, it's like to have a vote of confidence sometimes is like nice, like
yeah, it
because
really is.
it's like how do I know if anyone's even listening? Because you look
Right,
at the views and it's like okay, X amount of views. Did they actually listen to it? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
are we talking to a brick wall? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe like
Yeah.
so. Uh,
Screaming into the void.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So I appreciate you guys that have reached out. So thank you.
yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Wrap it up and we'll do another one soon. Yeah.
Yep. Sounds
All
good.
right.
Peace.
Cool, man. Yeah. Have a good weekend.